Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for Local 2's live 2014 provincial election debate. Joining me today are candidates from the major three parties represented here in Sault Ste. Marie. Progressive Conservative candidate Rod Fremlin served 28 years with the Sault Ste. Marie Fire Services before retiring. Rod, who now runs a small business, is also a member of the Matthews Memorial Hospital Association Board of Directors. This is his first time running in a political race representing the PC party for this provincial election. David Orazietti, our incumbent Liberal MPP, is vying for the fourth consecutive term representing Sault Ste. Marie in provincial parliament. Orazietti was first elected as MPP in 2003 after serving 2 terms as a city councillor. He has served as parliamentary assistant to several cabinet ministers and was most recently named Minister of Natural Resources in 2013. An NDP candidate, Celia is the former president of Algoma University, where she taught in the Modern Languages program for over 15 years before taking on the role of president from 1998 to 2010. This is Celia's second time running as a candidate for the New Democratic Party, her first time being in the last provincial election in 2011. Thank you each for joining us today for the debate. We have predetermined the order of questions for the candidates, and I will be asking them to each individual, who will then have 2 minutes to answer the question. From there, each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. At the end of the debate, each candidate will have 2 minutes to summarize his or her stance on the issues that we have discussed here today. Rod was chosen to go first during our random selection. Rod, this first question is for you. Over the last 10 years, wind turbines and solar panels have become increasingly prevalent across the province. What is the best way to move forward when it comes to sustainable energy?
Right now, the province of Ontario has the highest energy rates in Canada. We want to make them the lowest. We're going to remove the green, anything to do with the green, as far as we're not going to proceed with any more wind turbines. They're robbing natural resources we have, as far as our waterways, which produce abundant amounts of electricity. We've got to relook at the whole green energy platform and make some serious changes to it to get the dollar value back where people can afford them in their homes. It's quite a task, but I believe that the PC party will be able to do this relatively easily, because there's such a mandate and an outcry from everyone in the province that they're dissatisfied. The cost is, like you say, is tripled. It's very important. We'll get the home will end up having more income when we reduce the dollar value towards energy, and they'll be able to use that to better live in this community. And that's what I believe will work.
Thank you for that answer. David, would you like to respond? You have 1 minute.
Well, when we came to government in 2003, we had blackouts in the province of Ontario. We were burning significant amounts of coal-fired energy, equating to $4 billion in healthcare costs in Ontario. We have now become the first government in the province to turn off coal-fired generation. The renewable energy industry in Ontario does employ about 42,000 people in the province, and the ability to be able to manufacture these types of technologies and export them to other jurisdictions is very, very important as part of the economy. But obviously we need power that's reliable and also affordable for people in Ontario. And I think we have a very solid plan to be able to move forward to continue to create stable, reliable energy in Ontario while eliminating coal-fired energy, which is something that has cost us significantly in the healthcare system. We have 3 programs to help support the cost of energy, the Clean Energy Benefit, as well as the Northern Energy Credit, and the Seniors Home and Property Energy Credit that helps reduce costs for people in our community.
Thank you. Celia.
Renewable energy certainly has a place in a portfolio of energy for the province of Ontario. Several problems with how the Liberals have implemented it. One is very limited consultation with communities. In fact, they've even changed the Endangered Species Act so that consultation is even less necessary, and birds and bats and other things that are affected by wind power, for instance, are less protected than they were before. So proper consultation, proper environmental assessment, and then directing these alternative energy projects to small communities, to homeowners, to First Nations, to municipalities that can really build business out around it, rather than, as the Liberals have had a tendency to do, reserve those projects for large corporations, often international. And then I agree, hydro prices have to be stabilized, have to come down. That's a whole nother subject of discussion.
Thank you. David, the next question is for you. Students graduating from Algoma University and Sault College are leaving the post-secondary world with significant student debt, while also facing an uncertain employment future in their chosen fields. What do you plan to do to address this issue?
So a very important question, and we've now added well over 100,000 new spaces in our colleges and universities, first of all, to ensure that young people had the opportunity or have the opportunity to be able to pursue a career or a program at a college or a university. Locally in Sault Ste. Marie, we've made huge investments both at Sault College, which has expanded new infrastructure, new programs, and at Algoma University. We passed Bill 80, making the school independent, 19th newest university. We raised the budget, in fact, by 150% at Algoma University, which is great for local decision making and our ability to allow young people to stay in our community and gain educational experience. We committed to a 30% tuition grant program, which is in place for full-time students in the province of Ontario. And in fact, 230,000 students in the province of Ontario are receiving the benefit of this reduced tuition grant, which makes tuition costs approximately, according to the Minister of Training Colleges and Universities, cost about the same as it cost 10 years ago to get that post-secondary education. So we're going to continue to do more if re-elected to invest in our local schools, both Algoma University and Sault College. I know the NDP will talk about a program. They committed to free tuition when they were in government, but when they got in government, they raised tuition by 50% and they cut grants to students, which we restored because the Conservative government didn't renew grants for students, and we brought grants back, upfront student grants to 135,000 students in the province of Ontario, something that was cut in the early 90s. We have a fantastic program for post-secondary education. We've hired many new instructors in post-secondary education, and we now have more opportunities in Northern Ontario. A new medical school, new architecture school, new law school, for the first time in Northern Ontario for students in Northern Ontario who can go to school closer to home.
Celia, would you like to respond?
Ontario's post-secondary tuition is the highest for Canada, and consequently, students graduate from post-secondary with the highest average debt load, around about $28,000 from an undergraduate degree. The 30% credit only applies to a few students in the system. It does not apply to all. High tuition is a real barrier. It's a psychological disincentive, but for many students who are perhaps supporting their family, have other obligations, high tuition is a real barrier. The NDP will freeze tuition rates in post-secondary, and they will also make the provincial part of the loan system interest-free. This will be a real help to students, an encouragement for them to continue on in their education, and we will also have a First Start program to create more jobs for people who are recent graduates, because that's the other area of concern, of course, what you do post-graduation.
Thank you. Rod?
Yeah, I've just heard on the radio the other day the news that Sault College had a roaring profit this year, and yet tuition went up in some students $1,000, $800, $1,000 this year, and they're showing a profit of, I believe it was $65 million. Now that's a scary figure. Why wouldn't that be turned back to? I know there's a certain amount of has to be for profit, but that's a little extreme. I believe, and locally here in the city, by getting everybody out in the workforce and get these young people, once we educate them, where are they going to go? We got to get the Sioux moving. Then they'll have a place to work. They'll have a place to go other than. We got to open up the job market. We have to fund these young people. We were losing a lot of talent out of town. We have to keep them here, and it's going to be quite a battle, but we can do it if we all pull together. I mean, there's a lot of questions to be asked, and we got a lot to be answered.
Great, thank you. Celia, this next question is for you. This question comes from one of our readers. I am an RPN who works in community healthcare, and the question I have is how each candidate and their party plans to prepare for the increasing number of cases of dementia in our community and across the province. In Sault Ste. Marie, there is not enough support in place today, and I fear for what the future will hold if nothing is done. Dementia has the potential to cripple our healthcare system, and I want to know how this will be addressed in the next 4 years.
That's a very good question. We have about 25% of our population now in Sault Ste. Marie that's 60 or over, and that percentage is going to grow in the next few years. And the first thing to do is to have a provincial plan for how we deal with the problems that aging populations bring with them. The challenges of dealing with lifespan that's increasing, but also rates of dementia and other illnesses that are increasing. Right now, what we're seeing in the Sault Ste. Marie in our long-term care facilities is an increase in the number of patients or the number of residents who have behavioral problems or who are suffering from various forms of dementia. And this stresses the whole system because they're more complicated to deal with, and they need more focused attention in their daily lives to get through the tasks of the daily life. PSWs are saying that in our long-term care facilities, there is not enough time to pay attention to the patients, and this is exacerbated by the percentage of people with behavioral difficulties. So first of all, we need a provincial strategy. The Alzheimer's Society has been calling for a provincial strategy for numerous years. We need to actually get one. Then we need to make sure that the funding for long-term care and for other supports in the community is keeping pace with the demand. One thing that's still missing, many Ontarians don't even have still a family physician or a primary care provider. The NDP will set up 50 new family health clinics to make access to health care more easy and more readily available. We will also do provider tax credit for families who are looking after a senior in their homes. This is most of the seniors actually with dementia are looked after in the home, 75% of them. We need to support those families.
Rod, would you like to respond?
Yes, I'd like to see more workers in the homes. We build large retirement homes all over. The workforces at these units, at these facilities are unsatisfactory, and it's not that they're not doing their job, it's just that there's too many people to take care of. We've got to hire more people. I believe that we should utilize our youth, who are maybe in nursing at college levels. Why don't we use them? Why don't we keep them working? Why can't they go and help do some of this work instead of them working elsewhere in the community? We got to hire more. We have to. We built the buildings. Let's man them with workforce. They're beautiful buildings. That we got to document that. And we got to get it stabilized because we're all going to be there someday, and it's important that we address this now.
David.
So this is a very important issue, and the Conservatives have committed to reducing public employees by 100,000, and the NDP candidate talks about the importance of this, but we're the ones with a plan. We've got a very real plan to address Alzheimer's supports in Ontario and in our community. We have committed to 25 specific clinics to help support those with Alzheimer's and dementia. Much like the first of its kind in Canada, the 25 nurse practitioner clinics, one of the first 3, which opened right here in Sault Ste. Marie. So that's one of the most important aspects to help support those individuals with Alzheimer's and dementia, to be able to bring one of those clinics here to Sault Ste. Marie. We've committed to that in our platform and in our budget as well. We've also committed for behavioral supports initiatives. So when you talk about long-term care home specific investments, for example, at the Davie Home, we provided $352,000 specifically to help train staff with behavioral supports so that those individuals have the training they need, much like what's taking place in other homes across the community.
Okay, thank you. Rod, this next question is for you. Ontario's deficit currently stands at $12.5 billion. How can the province eliminate that shortfall while maintaining jobs and without sacrificing important services?
Get rid of the bureaucrats at the top end. We got lots of bureaucrats at the top making large amounts of money. That's probably been tripled since the Liberals got in, and we need to get rid of that, get them back down to where we need more workers than managers, and that's, to me, is very important. We got to cut out all the overhead at the top, let's say, and bring it back down to where it's attainable to reach our goals of getting this budget back to where it's normal, back to zero. We got to balance that. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough fight, and I can't stress it enough. Everybody has to pitch in. We all have to give a little in this one. Whatever class you're in, it's going to be a long, hard fight, and we all got to pitch in. That's it.
David.
So it's certainly an important issue. One of the pieces of legislation that we brought in around the accountability measures and the auditor, an independent officer of the legislature, verifying the status of the provincial finances so that it's independent. You're not hearing that from any particular party. We are on track to balance the budget in 17-18. The auditor has confirmed that. We've also made significant investments to protect services. Well, we've had a very, very significant recession. I think we've done a very good job protecting public services in our community in Sault Ste. Marie, despite the most significant recession since the Great Depression. So, you have a party that is prepared to cut public servants, to reduce the costs. That in Sault Ste. Marie has been estimated at about 1,350 jobs. That's not where we need to go. We have a plan to continue to work to ensure the resources are here in Sault Ste. Marie for the people that need them, and also ensure that the budget is balanced on track.
Celia.
You have to first of all stop the scandals, stop the waste of money, stop cancelling gas plants to buy votes, as the Liberals have done with a $1.1 billion price tag. Stop mismanaging important files like e-health and important services like Orange. We estimate that there have been at least $3 billion wasted on scandals and incompetency and mismanagement. First, you stop that. Then you fulfill the promise that the NDP pushed for, the Liberals agreed to have a financial accountability office. You fill it with, indeed, somebody who's objective and not with Liberal insiders as has been proposed. Finally, the NDP would create a Ministry of Savings and Accountability, because there's a lot of duplication right now, a lot of places we could save. Let's spend our taxpayers' dollars wisely. Let's watch every dollar and put that money towards services that people need.
Thank you. David, this question is for you. Energy costs across the province, both for homeowners and businesses, have been soaring, but we in the north have been particularly hit hard with our long, cold winters like the one that we just experienced. What would you and your party do to help that?
So energy is obviously an important issue, and we have 3 energy programs that are in place for residents. So we have a seniors energy and property tax credit that helps reduce the cost of energy and property taxes for individuals in our community by just over $1,000 per household. We also have a Northern Energy Credit program. This is only available to residents if they live in Northern Ontario, and that's an additional roughly $200, a little bit over $200, as well as the Clean Energy Benefit, which reduces costs by about 10% off an electricity bill, which is an additional roughly $150 to $180 per resident as well. And another important program that we have with respect to energy, only available in Northern Ontario, is a Northern Industrial Energy Rate program. That is seeing major industries in Sault Ste. Marie continue to operate, protecting jobs. It means $41 million to SR, Tenaris, and Flakeboard. Those are very, very important jobs, and in a fragile economy, these supports are helping to make the difference between people working and not working in some cases. And so we need to continue to do that, and we also need to find efficiencies within the system, within the IESO and the OPA and the OPG, and these organizations that I would certainly agree have challenges, and we need to bring them together to create greater efficiency so that we can reduce pressure and energy costs. We have eliminated all of the coal-fired energy in Ontario, and we haven't had blackouts since we've come to government, and we've strengthened our energy system. In fact, we've invested over $10 billion in transmission and generation in Ontario to renew what has been a very fragile and challenged infrastructure in the energy sector in Ontario. It had been lacking investment for many, many years. So I think those are important initiatives that we need to move forward with.
Thank you. Celia?
We have to address the problem at its root source. One of the causes is the Conservatives splitting Ontario Hydro into 9 different agencies. 4 of those agencies should be brought together again as one Ontario Hydro, with one CEO and with a streamlined administration. That alone will save costs. We're doing things like selling Ontario electricity at half the cost it takes to produce it to the United States. We're not in the business of subsidizing Americans' power consumption, but that is actually what's happening. Down the line, we need to really look at where we go in the future. Are we going to build new nuclear plants, the way the Conservatives say? That's a great way to bankrupt the province. So good planning, conservation, grants to homeowners for retrofitting their homes, restructuring Ontario Hydro, keeping it public, keeping it accountable.
Rod?
Let's get the debt down. That's what we have to do. The energy costs, they're crazy. They're not even in proportion with, how can anybody survive here? If every household in our community is affected by this, we have to get the costs down. Green energy is a big cause of this. As my colleague said, extra energy going to the States and us buying it back after, that's ridiculous. We should take care of our province first and foremost. Then we can to sell electricity to the States is fine, but don't buy it back. That doesn't make any sense at all. Somebody has to be accountable. The previous government has to be accountable for where we are today with this. It's out of whack. It's out of control. We have to stop it. I mean, the $100, $300 they're going to give a year towards this on a $1,900 a month debt, ridiculous. Thank you.
Celia, this last question is for you. A key part of the Liberal government's proposed budget was a provincial pension plan. Some see this as a necessary safety net, while others have painted it as an unneeded duplication that harms small business. What is your position?
Well, originally that idea came from the NDP, and the Liberals voted against it in 2010. So the NDP are very aware that 2 out of 3 people in Ontario do not have a pension plan. One simple answer would be, let's improve the CPP. But that's a federal plan, so we have to work federally to see if we can improve the CPP, which would be a good, equitable solution for all of Canada. In the absence of that, an Ontario plan does make sense, but not the one that the Liberals have proposed. The one that the Liberals proposed, they've caved to insurance companies, they've caved to banks. It's not a fully public plan. It's not a defined benefits plan. We can do better in Ontario. So the NDP would propose to do some kind of retirement planning for the people of Ontario, especially for those 2 out of 3 people in Ontario that do not have a workplace pension plan. CPP is not adequate. We need to supplement, but the Liberal plan is a no-starter in our view.
Rod?
This is a topic we have to definitely get involved in. What the PC party will do is, again, we have to get people working and staying here. That's a big part of this thing. We have to get people, Sault Ste. Marie has to get functioning again like it did back in the days. Nobody wants to stay here. We have to get costs down where people can afford to live here. We have to get the energy bills so that people can live properly, get them at home. Education, there's just so many reasons why we have to address this, change the governments and get it back where we're working in unison with each other. It's totally out of control. We have to get rid of, put new figureheads in, try and get a better base. It's a mess. I can't say that enough. Ontario is in a mess, and we have to fix it.
David,
well, this is a very important issue, and it's one that we've committed to, because I continue to hear that people do not have enough money to retire on in Ontario. This is something that is across the country. Premiers across this country have urged the federal government to strengthen the Canada Pension Plan, but to no avail. And here we have the NDP flip-flopping again on another issue. They say they're in favor of it, but we bring in a plan and they make other excuses as to why they shouldn't vote for it. The reality is we've got a plan to help strengthen retirement security and benefits for seniors in our community that I continue to hear repeatedly. They are not living on enough resources that come from CPP. CPP is a very modest retirement plan, and seniors in our community are struggling. We talk about an aging community, we talk about these other challenges, but a pension plan that shows our seniors the dignity and respect that they deserve is something we put forward in our plan, and that was voted against in the budget. So we need to be able to go back to Queen's Park so that we can implement that program.
Great. Thank you all for your answers to today's questions. You now each have a chance to summarize your thoughts on the issues that we've discussed today, and we will again start with Rod.
Well, my thoughts are the same as they've always been. We're in bad shape. We all have to pull it together. We all have to make sacrifices to get this province back on track. We want the budget balanced. We want people to live happily again. I want work back here. I want the jobs open up in the Soo. I want apprenticeship programs. There's just a list goes on and on of things. We all know what the questions are. That people don't want to know. They know the answers to the questions they're asking, and they don't want to hear that. They're hoping somebody's going to come up with this magic plan as to how our province is going to get back. And the only way is we got to make some serious changes now, because we're losing so much money every hour that if we don't do it pretty soon, our children will never get out of debt. It's time we just address these issues. Let's fix them. And we can if we all work together, and we're out of money. That's it. We're broke. I don't know where everybody's going to get the money to pass on to everybody else, but I can't say that enough. We got to get this fixed. And it's going to be quite a battle. I know we can do it as a province.
Thank you. David?
I think it's clear. We've got a plan to move Ontario forward and move our community forward. Anyone who's been living in this community for the last 10 years knows very well the investments and the provincial resources that have come to our community. The Conservatives are committed to cutting 100,000 jobs. That's roughly 1,350 in our community. We cannot afford that. We've had NDP representation before. It meant 19% unemployment as late as 1998. It meant cuts to medical school spaces. It meant cuts to nursing. It meant no new schools. It meant no new hospital. I mean, those are the investments that we've brought to our community. So we have a very strong plan to move our community forward, both with a job strategy, a youth employment program, more investments for home care and supports for our seniors, as well as an Ontario pension plan that we think we need to be able to implement and move forward. I think most people in our community recognize the significant progress that we have made in our community in 10 years. And they want those investments to continue so that we can strengthen our community. And they don't want to go back to a time when we had representation that left our community off the map with very little coming to Sault Ste. Marie in terms of investments to strengthen our industry, for youth, for education, for healthcare, and those types of investments. So we have a very solid plan, and I'm asking people respectfully for their vote in Sault Ste. Marie to continue as the MPP so that we can continue to make these investments, to continue to strengthen our economy, to continue to make important healthcare investments, education investments, and infrastructure investments, including things like four-laning Highway 17 and other significant investments that need to be made, including a commitment to the Ring of Fire for jobs in Northern Ontario.
Thank you. Celia?
We need government accountability. It's time to stop the scandals. $3 billion wasted. It's time for a timeout for the Liberals. We need affordability in our community. People who cannot make ends meet because hydro bills are soaring out of control. Another example, automobile insurance. We have the lowest accident death rate in Canada and the highest automobile insurance rates. Liberals promised to lower automobile insurance by 15%, but your bills haven't gone down, my bills haven't gone down. So, more accountability, making life more affordable, and then protecting jobs. Here in Sault Ste. Marie, we have companies such as SR, such as Flakeboard, that are resource-based companies. 300,000 jobs have been lost when companies like that have closed throughout Ontario under the Liberals. Hydro rates are important to keep those companies open. Investment in infrastructure and productivity is important to keep those companies open. That's where we need to go in Ontario. And let's look at Ontario Lottery Corporation as well. A stable, important employer here in Sault Ste. Marie, a driver of knowledge-based economy and economic diversification here in Sault Ste. Marie, threatened by Liberal plans to modernize, which really means to privatize, a one-year job protection, and that's it. Those jobs are threatened. Those jobs may leave our community. We have to build on what we have here in our community, build on our strong employers, build on our educational institutions, and make sure while we're doing this that we do it in an accountable way and that we look after the vulnerable in our society, the elderly, the young, the ill. We can do it. I ask for your vote in this upcoming election.
Thank you. That is it for our 2014 provincial election debate. Thank you again to the candidates for joining us today. We will be rebroadcasting the debate on the site for anyone who missed it in its entirety. A reminder that advance polls are now open in Sault Ste. Marie. The provincial election takes place on June 12th. For Local 2, I'm Jasmyn Rowley.